their questions in the chat, and then we'll be able to answer their questions, and they'll be able to hear them and the answers to their questions via the live stream. And while we're doing that, Chris will be seeing what he can do in the background, but I think it's a good idea to start. So just a couple more minutes, and then we'll be ready to start. Hello. So we're going to start. The link has been sent to the councillors online, and they've been asked to put their questions in an email or in the chat. So hello everyone. Sorry for the delay in starting, a few technical issues, but welcome councillors, members of the public and anyone watching online. This is a meeting of the Cabinet. I'm Councillor Rosie Moore, Deputy Leader of the Council and Cabinet Member for Climate Action and Environment, and I'll be chairing this meeting in the absence of Councillor Let's be ambitious. I'd be grateful if all councillors that want to put a question do so in a concise manner and refrain from making speeches. This includes Cabinet members, party leaders and all other councillors attending this evening. If there are technical questions that can't be answered or we run out of time, please send your questions to me and I will ensure they'll be answered in a written response as soon as possible. So, number one, apologies for absence. I've received apologies from Councillor Thornborough and Councillor Jean Glasgow. Does anybody have any other
afternoon. Chartered Mrs. Friends.
So we're representing the Friends of St Thomas's Park group. You've seen our statement. I wonder if you'd like to take it as read, given your pressed for time. We will sort of want the opportunity to come back, as I believe we're entitled to, after the councillor or councillors have responded to our statement. But I think if all of you are happy to confirm you've seen it.
For residents and nature. I have heard from local residents and ward councillors about the importance of the park. They also mentioned all of the community work that's been done since the establishment of Friends of St Thomas's Group, such as tree planting and bird box building events. That's why the Cabinet report makes clear that officers will review what is possible utilising the garage space area only, and to minimise any impact on the park. The team will work with local residents to ensure that all changes to the green space are clearly agreed before designs are progressed to planning. And we will keep you and your group updated as the project progresses. Officers will also look at how the space can be adopted as a park, as part of the council's nature, open spaces and city services portfolio, protecting it for the future for use by local residents, including council tenants who will live in the new council homes. Thank you.
Thank you. And now you have 1 minute for a supplementary question.
Thank you. And I should have mentioned that we have in the corner there the chairman of Birdwood Area Residents Association. He's not able to speak, Roger Hickley Hills, but has come along to support and will answer any of your questions if you have any for him about the Residents Association view of the importance of this open space. So thank you very much, Councillor Bird, and let me say from the outset, as residents, we are incredibly proud of the council's track record on the house building that you're doing. It's an amazing thing the city is doing, and we are absolutely not anti redevelopment of the derelict garage site area. It's an important brownfield site. Every bit of brownfield matters in this city. We absolutely know that. But at the same time, green spaces really matter, and that's a thread that runs through your corporate policies, through your emerging local plan, and the protection of open spaces has been a theme in this city, more local plans than I care to mention, but the protection of those spaces and what they contribute to health and well-being, biodiversity, climate change mitigation, and just the enjoyment of this city. Apologies, feels like I'm making a speech now, but I will get to my question. It really goes without saying. I can't underscore how I think surprised has been, in a sense, the feeling of people in this bit of Coleridge. So my question really is, and we've looked at Campbell really carefully, but I think we're concerned about words like mitigate the impact or work with residents to agree. We do feel that Cabinet should give a clear steer, and our question really is, why can't you give a clear steer that development should be restricted to the brownfield area only and leave the protected public open space, which appears in local plans, which is a strategy document of this council and this Cabinet as well. Our question is, why can't you give us a definitive view that the open space will be protected from development, including during any construction? We want to work with you, but I think our question is, why can't you be definitive about that and not use words that can be open to interpretation?
Thank you. Councillor Bird.
Sorry about that. Well, thank you for your question. At the moment, we haven't got no design or anything set up. And what I want to do is for you to be involved when we get to the start looking at the design, what we can do. We're hoping to put in 3 to 4 bedroom houses. But this, of course, may go down to just 3. So that will give us extra I can't give you a complete answer at the moment because we're at the early stages. And I can remember when we spoke before, many years ago when this was up before, and I knew how the feeling was. I know the area very well because I had a house in St Thomas's Square. So, and I grew up in Burford Road, so I understand how you feel. And I can say, I'll promise you that we'll make sure that you every part of what we do and the Residents Association. So you can look at the designs, tell us what you think, and we'll go from there. I hope that reassures you. But we will not do anything that we shouldn't be doing. Let's put it like that.
Thank you. Now, because we've got two public speakers and then another member of the public here to discuss this issue, what I propose is moving item 7 up the agenda, so we'll deal with that one now. So then that's back to you, Councillor Bird. But I just want to clarify that I am a resident of, I'm not just a resident of Coleridge Ward, but also I live in the area and I use the park a lot myself. But also I have been homeless, and so I am also hugely in favour of council homes, and so I'd just like to make that clear before we start. But if we go with you, Councillor Bird, please, to introduce this item.
Chair, thank you. I'm delighted to bring forward the Small Sites Programme to Cabinet, which outlines proposals to deliver 100% council homes. The total number of the new council homes is 91, which is a net gain of 88, mainly 3 to 4 bedroomed houses. This programme is designed to provide opportunities for local, smaller architects, consultants and small to medium enterprise contractors. With Homes England funding, the council will be able to offer more of the new council homes on the lowest level of council rent, social rent, which is discounted to around 40 to 45% of the market rents. The report outlines the progress on 3 existing schemes, Kendall Way, Paget Road and St Thomas's Road, and seeks approval to progress 3 additional sites: the Queen's Meadow Phase 2, the Hawthorns at Haviland Way and the Horizon Community Centre site. The indicative combined budget for this process is 37.4 million, drawn down from allocated budgets. On St Thomas's, there is a commitment from the council to only look at what is possible to develop on the garage site area. We are not building on the park, and we will work with the community on any improvements to the park or any impacts caused during the construction phases. All homes will be designed in line with the Cambridge Sustainable Housing Design Guide, supporting the council's objectives on sustainability, energy efficient and tackling food poverty. There will be healthy homes which are cheaper to run. This is a great programme to build 91 much needed new council homes to support our tenants with the growing families and to reduce the risk of homelessness. Plus, at the moment, on our housing waiting list, we have 2,224 people waiting, families waiting for homes. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bird. And sorry, everyone, I jumped the gun and I should have said or highlighted that there's a typo in the report. So in section 4.1.3, where it states a purchase price of 1,125,000, it should read 1,375,000. So the overall budget is not affected by that, and that's on item 225 on the agenda pack. So we will note that when we go to the recommendation. And I'd just like to use Chair's privilege to reiterate that I personally and also local residents really value the park, and a lot of work has been done, and that's why we're committing to use the brownfield site. But obviously during works there could be impacts on the site during the building works, but we will work with residents to reduce those impacts. So, do we have any cabinet members who would like to comment or ask any questions? Yes, Councillor Todd Jones.
Yes. Can I ask Councillor Bird if there's any consideration of possibility of some sort of community facility at St Thomas's Park? I know that's something that there was sort of a clear demand from local residents, so I'd be grateful if you could answer that, please.
I can remember when that was discussed last time when we were going through looking at St Thomas's, and we were looking at doing a little community room if we built on the garage site opposite this development. So this development, we wouldn't be able to, we wouldn't have the room to do a community centre. But there's nothing stopping us in years to come to have a look at doing it on the other garages opposite.
Okay.
Thank you. And any other cabinet members have a question? No? Thank you. So how about any of the chairs of either of the scrutiny committees or either of the leaders of the other groups? Yes, we've got Councillor Bennett, please.
Thank you, Chair. Can you hear me?
Could you make... Oh.
Apologies, I'll start again. Ben Binns actually answered most of my questions before the meeting, but there was just one particular one I wanted to raise, which is that the council's committed to getting close to Passive House standard, but is not going for formal certification to save cost. And so, as an accountant, I love cost savings, but I need to know what the risk balance is. So I'd like to ask, and perhaps this information could be provided subsequently, how much money does it save to skip certification? Are the homes to be built similar in design to others that have received certification in the past, which would enable a beacon approach to be taken? And I'm obviously pleased that we aspire to Passive House, but what I want to know is, are we actually getting there? Thank you. I've also been asked by residents to raise a question about Horizons. Although that site isn't an Abbey ward, it is used heavily by Abbey residents. And given that the City Council isn't the site provider and has to depend on County Council cooperation, how confident are we that there will be re-provision and that there will be a satisfactory meantime provision during the building works? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, I think for your first question, most of that information is already available online, but it might be helpful to signpost that. But perhaps I don't know if Councillor Bird or Ben Binns would like
Yeah.
to.
Chair, can I?
Can you hear me a bit better there? So we have done a study of comparing passive house certified with close to passive house. Hence, we adopted the CAM standard. So I'll send you that information. Essentially, the last 10% is very marginal in terms of gains for the tenant, and that's stated in the report. But I will share that report with you outside this meeting. In terms of Horizon, if I can quickly answer that, we'll be working with county on that, and the collaboration is based on the principle of a replacement and making sure the users as well as the operators are looked after during the transition. So that is part and parcel of the whole development in order to do that. So I will continue to liaise with ward members to ensure that happens.
Thank you very much. So now we have one question that's come through online, so I will just read that out from Councillor Martinelli. Based on the report, I'll read it as him. Based on the report, I'm not clear on the criteria for deciding whether Hawthorns and Horizons go into the small sites programme or into KIP, and no assurance about tenure mix under either option. Before approving £32 million of delegated authority, can Cabinet set out what test will be used to make that choice and confirm what social affordable commitment will apply whichever route is taken?
I can assure Councillor Martinelli that these are all council homes, 100%, and I meant to say as well that 5% of that will be wheelchair accessible homes. At the moment, we haven't got a builder. We're just going through all the system of looking at what can possibly be done, as you can see in the report. It outlines the development we'd like to do, and like I said in my speech, I really want to use local builders, contractors, architects and that, because I think that'll be good for their business as well. So we haven't employed KIP or anybody at the moment.
Thank you very much. Sorry? Oh, yes. Do we have any other questions or speakers on that item? I think we have Councillor Griffin.
It was not before. So, good.
Thank you. So before we go to the vote, I'd just like to say to anybody that's any councillors that haven't been able to send their question in, of course you can at any time email or ask a cabinet member or an officer for information. You don't actually have to wait till for a cabinet meeting. And if we do receive any late submissions, we will send an answer to you. So, with that in mind, I would like to move to the recommendations. So, are Cabinet happy to take all of the recommendations en bloc? And you've all got the recommendations in the papers, yes? So you're happy to take the recommendations? So all in favour of? Yep. Thank you very much. So now we will go back to item number, or maybe we'll just have 1 minute for everybody that wants to leave. Thank you very much. So now we will move on to item number 5, which is the budget setting context 2027 to 28. So that Councillor Jenny Gawthrope-Wood, Cabinet Member for Finance and Corporate Operations, will introduce this item. Go ahead, please, Jenny.
Okay, thank you. Can everybody hear me? Yeah. No? For the next budget setting, and to agree the high-level approach for the budget setting and the public consultation. I just want to note that the statutory 2025-6 end-year accounts were published by the deadline on the 30th of June, and they're on the City Council website. So this paper sets out the context for the next budget, which will be the last before local government reorganisation. But we still need to do this, and we still need to look at the midterm view in readiness for the transfer to the new authority. So there will be a good deal of work and resources needed for this final budget and looking forward in the coming 18 months. And as the Council is currently in no overall control, the budget setting approach this year is slightly different, and I'll come to that. But where we are now, the very big picture is that the general fund is currently fine. We had a 1.9 million underspend in 2025-26, but more pressures are coming down the line. The war in Iraq, interest rates increase, which are now at 3.6% rather than 2.6% for the current year, which is what we'd forecast, and local government reorganisation and other things. So we can't be complacent. The Public Works Loan Board rates are now 6.16% rather than 5.55%. So these external pressures affect our current costs and prices and our budget for the current year and longer term forecasts. Now there's a lot of detail on the end year 2025-6 picture and the spending in the quarterly report, which is the last item today, and I can report on that later. The local government finance grant is now supposed to be set for 3 years, so there may be some adjustments. We were able to keep our business rates for this last year, but they are currently down for a variety of reasons. It's quite complicated. Our car parks and letting the Park Street Hotel mean that we do continue to do well. We can come back to that later in the quarterly performance report. Now on the HRA, we have new asset compliance and service pressures. They also affect the general fund commercial assets. The HRA, Housing Revenue Account, I should say, has significant cost pressures. And although, you know, underlying income is strong, we do need to keep an eye on those. Delivering new builds through KIP, the Cambridge Investment Partnership, that does rely on Homes England funding for council home building, and that is going well. And we do sell some, which even with a slowing market brings in money for building more council homes. And we have applied to be a Homes England strategic partner. So for our existing housing and older homes, we do have new statutory duties, including AWAB's law, and repairs, for repairs, safety, and raising the stock to EPC C level. So the repairs are largely demand-led. We are picking up needed repairs earlier with the housing stock condition survey and tenant audits. This might be something that Councillor Bird might want to comment on. Voids and the condition of vacated properties are still an issue, and it's an issue as we're not getting the rent in while repairs are being done. And then we've had things like Waking Watch needed at Hanover and Princess Court, Spurgeon's Court, and that costs over £1 million, or has cost us that much. City Council Services just has tried to look at contractor management and their work process to improve efficiencies and bringing some of the DCM work back in-house. So there's a net operating overspend of 6.9 million. So it's very unlikely that the current budget allocation of 1.7 million is going to reduce. So this means that, like the previous year, some 6.4 million would not be reallocated to Housing Revenue Account capital budgets to finance the new builds and other capital spending. But the good news is that repairs and improvements are being done. And I think the fact we've got that overspend sort of shows that we're trying to get on with it. So now the report also sets out the timeline and approach for the next budget setting process, which we hope to agree today, at least in the high level. I won't go into detail, but it does include, as we're in no overall control, we've already set up the group leaders finance working group so that they have full oversight of the process and can feed into it. By early September, well, August, September, we expect outputs from the challenge meetings with officers and the senior executive, the chief executive, and at leader level. So challenge and strategic focus meetings will be held. So those are for officers. And then by September, we're looking at getting detailed service level budgets. So that's a month earlier than previously. And then in November, we hope to share that with the finance working group, the leaders group, and cabinet. And then the public consultation, so that's a 6-week consultation. That occurs in July, will be in July, August, with a and it's at a strategic level, and we would hope to get the views from that to feed in September. So that will be held online, similar to last year, but we may want to look at how we engage with certain groups of people. And that's certainly something that in the very long term, I know that the Deputy Chief Executive is very interested in, and how we can use data in the future. But to improve that. But this is going to be the last budget to be set before the local government reorganisation happens. So then in January, we'd expect this to go to scrutiny, to the Performance Assets and Strategy Scrutiny Committee, and then to come to, in February, to Cabinet, and then to full council. So that's my report.
Thank you very much, Councillor Gawthorpe. Do any other Cabinet members have any questions or comments? No, I'd just like to say thank you, and it's great as a new Cabinet member that you've hit the ground running, as it were, and I look forward to the new way of working with all parties in the council working together on the new new budget. So in terms of people that wish to speak, I've got just two people. Oh no, Karen Young doesn't. Okay, so we've got Tim Bick and then Councillor Bennett, please.
Thanks, Chair. And I'd just like to reinforce what you said. I mean, I think that the idea of accommodating views across the council through use of this finance working group is a good approach, and I welcome it. I wanted to ask, though, whether the public consultation that is proposed to do what seems like quite early in the process this time will be something that the working group can look at and comment on before it's framed and sent out to people, because the questions we ask tend to influence the answers we receive, and I think that all parts of the council would like to be comfortable that we were asking the right ones. And then the third point I wanted to make was about the housing revenue account, and so we were aware, I think, as we came into the budget for this year, that that all wasn't well, in the sense that we found we weren't budgeting for the amount of housing repairs we needed to do. Some measures were taken in the budget ostensibly to accommodate the actual rate of spend on housing repairs. I'm not quite clear from what the portfolio holder said. Do we believe that what we did with this year's budget is sufficient to have fixed that? Or does there still need to be a further reset? Because the clear consequence of the situation we were in was that we were needing ultimately to borrow more for our building expectations, and it would be quite a concern if we had to reset and curtail what we plan to do there.
So I would hope that well, that we do need to increase the transparency, and we didn't really, and I think it's been extremely useful to have other people and other parties involved, so that there are no sudden surprises later on. So thank you for that. Now, on the public consultation, I would hope that we would be able to share that with the group, the working group. I haven't seen the question yet, or the question design as yet. So I don't know whether that's something Jodie would like to comment on.
Yes, certainly. I'd be happy to engage with the members' working group on the design of the consultation. We haven't kicked that off yet, but we're going to be working on that over the next couple of weeks. So happy to engage on that.
Right, so on the third point, on the HRA, I actually wrote a lot more, and I've rather skated over it, because in the quarterly report you can dig down and see quite a bit more of what's going on. That's the end year, final quarter report. I think it's something that we have to keep a watching brief on. And again, I'm going to pass over to Councillor Bird. Do you want to comment, or Jodie?
Yes, I mean, I think there were a couple of things happening in terms of that large overspend at year end. I think, first of all, last year was the first year really that we saw the impact of the implementation of Awaab's law. And I think that when we were forecasting during the year, and bear in mind that the budget bids were done on the basis of forecast at quarter 2, so end of September, and I think we underestimated the degree to which some of that demand pressure was seasonal and the extent to which that then increased over the winter. So I think there are lessons we can learn there. I also think, you know, we're kind of straying into the detail in the Q4 report now, but if you look at the overspend, there's around about £3 million of that overspend was on items that were clearly one-off pressures in terms of the Waking Watch and the couple of incidents that we had in some of our blocks this year. So roughly half the overspend was on one-off pressures. There is focused work ongoing with the service to try and bring the expenditure back in line with the budget. You may remember that a lot of the additional budget, the investment that was put in, wasn't just purely increasing budget lines on repairs. There was quite a lot of investment in the team and in process and in contract management, and some of those things will take a little bit of time to filter through, but we are working on that. And obviously when we bring out the Q1 report, which will come to Cabinet in September, that will be our first chance to have a look on sort of where we're tracking in the current year.
Thank you. Councillor Bennett, did you have a question?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Jenny. I'm particularly pleased to hear you mention no surprises, because that has been one of the aims on everything I've negotiated for in the post-election negotiations. For too long, ruling group has relied on having a large majority that it can push things through with, and with no overall control, it's much more important that there are clear explanations and that problem areas are spotted earlier in the year. But that's not the only reason I push for it. There are 4 or 5 accountants among the councillors, depending on how you count it, but there are 42 councillors, and it's really important that all 42 councillors feel empowered and able to scrutinise our finances, and that we do indeed unleash the power of 42 and not merely the power of 4.5. So I welcome the changes. I will be reporting back to you throughout the year as to how well I think it's going, and I will mention one warning now, which is that for years the Green Housing Leads have been telling you that there is a huge underreporting problem on housing repairs, and that evidence has come through from the tenant reps, it's come through from the voids, it's come through from the customer audits. You can only unlock the power of 42 if everybody gets listened to and those warnings are heeded. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Bennett. I have to say that I understand that in terms of transparency and reporting, I mean, 2 things. First of all, I think the quarterly performance reports, these are meant to be fairly easily digestible. You don't have to be an accountant and you don't have to run through loads and loads of tables. And I must say, I think this is a big improvement in helping everybody and members of the public to understand what's going on and the finances, and certainly from the point of view of residents and being a customer. The other thing is in terms of transparency. Well, I do know of a couple of councillors who went on a leadership course to Warwick and came back and said, well, actually they have working groups on the budget. So this is something that we've now taken on board, and they weren't Greens. So although this is not, it is at the moment at the leaders level, I think this is a good thing. Personally, I would encourage everybody to read the quarterly performance reports and the indicators there. And I'll pass over to Councillor Bird, if I may, on reporting of housing repairs and other issues. But I just want to say that, of course, one of the issues is getting people to report, and that's one of the reasons that the housing condition survey and the tenancy audit are extremely useful. Councillor Bird, may I ask you to respond?
Okay, thank you, Jenny. Okay, our repairs, we are doing really well with the repairs. The damp and mould and condensation has always been the big one, and we're doing our utmost to help residents get the work done. We're actually looking at bringing that in-house, back in-house. So that's something that's going to come up, which I'm really pleased about, because then we can really get our workers in there, getting it done straight away. The other thing is on our voids. Our voids are coming down, which is really good news. I'm sorry, I should have had the figure with me. And that's the main thing. As long as we do the regulator jobs, which is the stock condition surveys, which of course we then pick up more work that needs doing, and the DCM. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, sorry. Thank you. I believe that the voids are mentioned in the final item on the agenda, which is the, what's it called? Yes, the quarterly report for performance report. Now, could I just double check, are there any questions online for this item?
Yes.
Oh, yes, okay. Oh, okay. So if I could hand over to Jodie, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, Councillor Flaubert online has spotted a couple of dates that haven't been updated. So paragraph 6.9 and 6.10, just for clarity, Cabinet will meet on the 11th of February 2027 to recommend the budget, not 2026. And full council will meet then on the 25th of February 2027, not 2026, obviously, for the 27-28 budget. I think when I wrote this, I couldn't quite believe we were that close to 2027 already.
So thank you very much to Councillor Flaubert for that. So we will edit that, and could I just confirm with the other Cabinet members that you are happy with the recommendations which can be found on page 29 of the agenda? And are you happy to vote on those together in one? So all those in favour with the edited dates for the meetings? Yes? Thank you. That's unanimous. So next we have number 6, Homelessness and Rough Sleeping Strategy 2021 to 2028, page 39. So Cabinet Member Mike Todd-Jones, please.
All right, thank you, Chair. I'll just give a brief overview of the homelessness strategy, and then happy to take questions. I hope you've read all the reports and the documents are attached. So PPL, our consultants who undertook the review, found that we had a strong foundation, good at crisis intervention, but increasing challenges. particularly the increased number of people presenting with high-level, multiple and complex needs. Harder to access the private rented sector, pressures of increased use of temporary accommodation. Sorry, can you not hear me? Is that better? You want me to start? Okay. So we're also very conscious that much of the experience of those on the streets and experiencing homelessness is trauma informed. So looking at delivery of services which are working very closely with the National Health Service and the Integrated Care Board. The government context is a huge commitment to tackling homelessness through the National Plan to End Homelessness. I'll focus on the action plan to 2028. This is the context, of course, of local government reorganisation and extending our current strategy from 2021. So we have statutory duties. Obviously, working to end homelessness does require critical partnership working as well. We cannot do this alone as a council. We have a huge range of organisations in the voluntary and community sector that help us deliver the services that we all want to provide. I want to go on to the 6 priorities which we're going to build on in the action plan. Supporting those at risk of homelessness. We'll be working with Changing Futures, the county-led programme developing metrics to identify vulnerable households. The Low Income Family Tracker, developed with South Cambs, will help us also to make sure that early intervention, avoiding crisis points, is really top of the agenda. Improving access to permanent accommodations. We'll be reviewing our private rented sector access model, the landlord packages of financial incentives and tenancy support. We will minimise as much as possible use of temporary accommodation. We know this can hinder our long-term accommodation solutions. Improving support and targeting financial barriers that otherwise escalate into crisis. So that's our support packages on debt, on practical support with flexible funding, affordable repayment arrangements and so forth to assist anyone who is struggling financially. Preventing rough sleeping, including enhancing pathways for those discharged from institutions in particular, so prisons, care leavers and those from hospital, and really to break the cycle of chronic homelessness and rough sleeping wherever possible. So increasing high intensity supported accommodation, and note the report references the new 8-bed Victoria project that we're working on, but also sustainable move-on pathways, including Housing First. The County Council Streets to Home Partnership, we will hopefully will further embed this into our strategy. And I want to finish with a quick comment about governance and oversight. So multi-agency homelessness strategy steering group will be overseeing the strategy. This includes the Greater Cambridge Housing Strategy, Health and Wellbeing Board and Community Safety Partnership. And most importantly of all, I think we want to remain really informed by the lived experience of those who are suffering homelessness. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So do any Cabinet members have any comments or questions about this item? Yes, Councillor Nesta, please.
Thank you very much. Would you be able to explain a bit more about the inform, sort of like by the lived experience of people? How will that work? Just sort of out of curiosity.
Week before last, I attended a homelessness conference, which had direct input from people who have lived experience of homelessness. So people that have been supported into long-term accommodation. And what I'm really keen on, through the work of the Homelessness Charter, but the Council's leadership too, is that we hear those voices in all the sort of support pillars that the Charter is leading on, including our own council pillar that we lead on. So I think that's really critical that those voices are heard. We hear them through our partnership organisations, often in an informal way, but if we can embed them a little bit more in how that translates into our formal kind of strategy, I think that would be excellent.
Thank you very much. Do we have, so in the room we have a number of people. Oh, no, sorry. First, yep, Councillor Bird.
Thank you. Sorry about that, Chair. Thank you for the report. It's really interesting. As you know, homelessness is one of my things as well. And the modular homes were a great success, still are. And we work with It Takes a City, as you know. Would you see that we could perhaps get some more modular homes? I'm willing to work with you.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Councillor Bird. And I think I've already arranged a visit with Cyrenians. They're looking to deliver more modular homes across the city. I'll be visiting some sites with them. And I'm always encouraging, through our partners, the opportunity to deliver more modular homes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So now I believe Councillor Young, do you have a question, please?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, so I chaired the Services, Climate and Community Scrutiny Committee last year, and this was one of the things that we looked at. I think one of the key questions or recommendations that the Scrutiny Committee had was that the multi-agency working, and there are, thankfully for all of us, a huge number in Cambridge, help trying to deal with homelessness and different aspects of it. One of the key recommendations was that the council should lead that multi-agency working, and I was just wondering how Councillor Todd Jones saw that and thinks it's going to happen. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Young, for your question. You're probably aware I co-chair the Charter Group. Samantha Shimon and I, we both sit on the Charter Board. Simon Hunt, he leads the Housing Pillar Working Group, and also we'll be setting up a Homelessness and Rough Sleeping Board. I will chair, Samantha Shimon will be chairing that, as that will be officer-led. So we are conscious of that balance between working really closely with partners that deliver so many successful services in the city, but absolutely prepared to give direction and leadership across the piece. So it's very much finding the right balance, but there will be, I think, critical parts of this will be led by the council. So I hope that does reassure you.
Thank you. So now I've got Councillor Bennett.
Thank you, Chair. I've got a couple of points on this. I'll try and shorten them as much as possible. The first and most important one is that the Green Group would like to thank Simon Hunt and his team for the very prompt outreach work to protect street people in the heat wave. And I don't know if it's appropriate to have a vote of thanks. We'd also like to hear from the team members if they can give us some very rough initial feedback on that, what worked, what didn't, what you might want to do differently or in addition. But we do understand that might need to be later in the year. So that's point one. The second point is that we do welcome the emphasis on homelessness prevention. And I recognise from my own ward casework that in prevention work, the clock is always ticking and situations can deteriorate very quickly. However, we have a very complex statutory framework for our homelessness work, and I think sometimes not only residents but councillors get lost in the structure. So I would like to ask the cabinet member, hello Mike, if you would lay on some all-member training for councillors so that we can help residents connect with the right part of a homelessness service quicker and stop things from escalating out of control. My last point is on disability, and on page 61, the slide on pathway 3, routes to accommodation for priority singles. And I know over half of these residents need our support by reason of physical disability. And so Mike, what would be more useful to support these residents in your opinion? Is it better financial support, more help with home adaptations, or more accommodation that is disability compliant being built? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bennett. Yes, I was also very impressed with the reaction of our team, particularly the street outreach team in the recent heat wave. And I know that the team were also doing additional day shifts and offering practical support like water and protection and so forth to anyone they've found struggling of sleeping on the streets. And obviously the severe weather emergency protocol, that will be very mindful of the current extreme heat, where we need to call on it again. On the idea about training in terms of the complex area, as you say, our statutory duties and all the other services we offer, yeah, I'm sure we're all happy to provide training for that for all members, so they're very clear about what the boundaries are and what we cover. Absolutely. I will, in terms of the prioritising disability access or engagement with disability people in terms of homelessness and those on the street. Samantha, I will ask Samantha if she's got any more detail on that. I haven't got that to hand, I'm afraid.
Can you just clarify, Councillor Bennett, what you referred to a page number on that, just so I can be clear?
Page 61, and it's the slide on pathway 3.
Is that in the strategy or in the action plan? Oh, okay. All right. I haven't got that to hand. I think, as with anything, that will be a combination of factors. So with any of our homelessness support, it isn't just about the property. We do have to look at everything that is needed. You know, for some residents, just giving them a property isn't sufficient. As you say, they do need additional support. And without that, that tenancy is likely to fail and we go back into that cycle. So we would always look at what is needed. We link in quite a lot with the development team and with the wider planning around our housing strategy and what is required in terms of properties. But we also look at the support that is offered. We did obviously increase our tenancy sustainment team. This year we're in the process of recruiting to that team, and a big part of that is that we will be more proactive with new tenants, and everybody will get a contact as a new tenant. Those that are coming from a homelessness pathway will receive a home visit as part of that. So we will be looking to make sure we get that support in right at the earliest point. We do have a disabled adaptations budget as well within the HRA that we can utilise for any adaptations that are required.
Thank you very much. So now we've got Councillor Bick, then we've got Councillor Bajan, Councillor Tong, and we've got Councillor Nick Mannis then has got a question online. So Councillor Bick, please.
Thank you, Chair. Obviously, homelessness is a huge subject, and a large amount of it is about having more homes and the right sort of them. But there is a small part of the general challenge which is less about the having of more homes, but actually having people able to hold down tenancies in homes. And it's that area, I think, that Councillor Todd Jones was referring to when he spoke about those with multiple and complex needs. And the sad truth of that small population is that people gain access to homes and housing and often are back on the streets very, very soon afterwards, and it's a revolving door. Very often the issues that are preventing sustainment of tenancies are to do with health, mental health or addiction. And it's always seemed to me that we're going to struggle, whatever bricks and mortar we can lay our hands on, until we can have the health service contribute into this problem in a much more relevant way on the streets, not just dealing with people when they are in trauma. And so I just wanted to ask Councillor Todd Jones whether he believes that the health service are presenting themselves as we would hope for inside this strategy, or whether they have some further distance to go before they can really meet our needs and we can start to break that revolving door and the chain of people going in and out of rough sleeping.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Bick, and yes, absolutely. I absolutely support those sentiments, and as I mentioned, I think at the top of the report, the involvement of the National Health Service, the Integrated Care Board, is really, really important to those physical and mental health aspects that affect people who are experiencing homelessness or rough sleeping. And we know that the access surgery in Newmarket Road is really critical to supporting people, and trying to get more capacity. That kind of facility is really, really important going forward. So I totally understand that your sentiments, and I really support that direction of travel, and I hope we can develop some really practical capacity over the next couple of years with the action plan.
Thank you. So, Councillor Bajent, your question?
Chair, first of all, I'd like to say thank you for the opportunity to speak. I think that this new idea is a good idea. My question is about Jimmy's. I understand the lease is running out on the current place that Jimmy's is occupying. I also understand that they're extending their remit to helping people move forward. Has the council got any plans to rehouse them?
We have been in discussions with Jimmy's and about possible sites, all dependent upon what may or may not happen with the lease, with that all a bit uncertain at the moment. But I'm happy to refer perhaps to Samantha on any details since our last round of negotiations.
Yep, so we have been engaging with Jimmy's on this issue, and I think it's really key that we understand kind of what the demand is and also what the levels of funding are that are available, because you know, that's really key that anything is affordable. That some of that provision is funded through the county Streets to Home partnership, so they need to be part of those conversations to ensure any, you know, if we're looking at sites, if they are larger than they are now, that there is sufficient funding provision before we take those any further.
Very quickly.
And very quickly, Chair, I'm not taking advantage. So, can we be assured that Jimmy's won't be homeless?
Well, I think, Councillor Bajent, there's no way I could see Jimmy's being homeless, and we'll work absolutely as hard as we can with Jimmy's to find an appropriate site. Bearing in mind the caveats that have just been outlined, it's not simply about Jimmy's. We do have to look at facilities around the city, what needs there are around the city as well. So it could be that we'll be looking at Jimmy's alongside other services that are required, including county elements been mentioned and other factors. So, but we'll be doing our best to work really hard with Jimmy's about their future.
Thank you. Now, Councillor Tong.
On now? Oh, perfect, amazing. Sorry, it's difficult to tell from my perspective. One thing I want to check is, do I need to give a declaration of interest if I've done a bit of money raising for Jimmy's before? It's not really a main point of the document, nor am I a cabinet member, but I thought can that be put down? I feel the need to be transparent. Great, cool, just to make sure that's possible.
Noted, go ahead.
Yes, so my question, well, actually, firstly, I also want to thank officers for their work on this, as well as the cabinet itself. I have 3 little questions related to this document. First question is, well, one of the key problems that I think we need to work on is as well as tackling the problem of homelessness, which of course needs to be our main priority, we also need to try and make sure that while residents are homeless, that they have access to the amenities they need to survive and they can live comfortably in the meantime. And one thing we're really in short of in Cambridge is free public toilets. There is a discussion about public toilets later, so I obviously don't want to go too far down that rabbit hole. But there are a couple of spots where people have reported issues of public defecation, places like around Fair Street and Mill Road Cemetery. And one thing I'd really like if a council could look into is potentially getting some portaloos or something there, just to make sure there is a place people can go to use the toilet, because I think everyone deserves access to those resources they need to live in a dignified way. And on that topic, this also kind of intersects with the problem of drug paraphernalia, especially used needles being left in different places. I'd also love it if a council could look into, at these same sites as well as beyond, trying to get places where sharps can be disposed of safely. Because at the moment we have issues with residents, well, bumping into areas with used needles, and it can potentially cause a danger. The other questions I had, firstly, was to do with public hostility towards rough sleepers. Because at the moment I think there is a lot of public hostility, and that's really sad, and I think we need to do more to try and tackle that problem. There is a mention of us doing public outreach within the strategy, and I was wondering if we could try and factor that idea of trying to help the public have a bit more empathy at times with the homeless community into our strategy. And the final question is about the forward, which uses the same forward as it did previously, because this is obviously an extension of the previous report. Richard Johnson wrote the forward then, and that was back in 2021. I was wondering if we could potentially get an update on that, just to reflect the changed circumstances, but also I think it's really good if the council could kind of show, well, it's new vision, and I think every councillor puts a bit of a different spin on the forward and provides a new perspective, and I think it would be really good to, well, update this forward that hasn't been updated in 5 years.
Okay, just before we go ahead, I think the TV needs switching on. It's going to power off. Would Samantha like to answer questions 1 and 2 around? No? Or? I could answer them. Oh, okay. No, Robert's going to answer, and then if Councillor Smart or Councillor Todd Jones would like to add after that.
Yeah, just to come in about the homelessness strategy, I think provision of toilets for individuals that may be rough sleepers or homeless or part of street life. There is several co-production groups in Cambridge where officers work with the Changing Futures programme. So I think the strategy has been led by what those who are in need of housing or have these issues say that they need. I can't comment on whether those individuals want portaloos, or whether you may know more about sharps and how we dispose of them. But I think a lot of the strategy reflects what homeless people say that they want, rather than what I think often we see a problem, we think we know what the right solution is for those users, so it's very user-led. Sam, is there anything more you want to add?
No, I think that does cover it. Actually what the homelessness strategy is about delivering the support to get people away from rough sleeping, rather than providing facilities to enable that to continue. So that would always be the work that we look to do with through our street outreach team. There are, they will always point them into the areas where they can go, and again things like sharps, I know obviously the Cambridge Access Surgery has them, most pharmacies do carry sharps bins as well that can be utilised. So I think actually having sharps bins out in the open isn't generally recommended.
Yeah, thanks. If I could just follow up, Councillor Tong. I mean, obviously there's some cost-cutting issues here that are about the services the council provide, but as I referenced in my report, a lot of this is coming from those who are experiencing homelessness themselves and what they think are their top priorities. So we will listen to those kind of messages if they're out there. On public hostility, I kind of get your point, but that's not necessarily my experience. But what we do try and do as a council, and we've done this many times in terms of some of the things we offer, certainly through street aid, I would really encourage, I'm always trying to get more and encourage more publicity about street aid, a way of giving that isn't directly to people actually rough sleeping on the street, but will absolutely benefit them in terms of help and support, trying to get them into perhaps employment or into job interview. There's all sorts of support we offer in that way. And I think perhaps you're right, more public understanding about what we do as a council to support people on the street would be helpful. So we can certainly look at publicising that better. Yeah, happy to review just the 2-year action plan extension to the homelessness strategy and write a little form myself, if you like. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I make one correction to a comment that was made by Officer Shimon,
very quickly.
Which was, I didn't suggest having sharp boxes out in the open. However, other councils have had areas around the city where they can be disposed of, including places like public toilets, and that has been really, really successful. I understand that our priority needs to be getting people off the street. However, even the strategy itself accepts the fact that this strategy will not fully eliminate homelessness across the city. And with that in mind, I don't think we can continue letting people live really substandard lives. We also need to be making sure that if people are homeless, we are providing them with basic amenities.
Thank you. We do some of the public toilets, particularly I can think of the Lion Yard toilets, do have the sharps bins in them. I'm not sure if there are others, but perhaps that's something we can review and let you know after this meeting. We've got one person online now, Councillor Nick Mannis. Now, I'm not sure if you can hear and can ask your question yourself.
Can you hear me?
Oh, yes. Please go ahead with your question. Thank you.
It was a question, on the homelessness strategy. The driving force behind many of the issues and challenges described in this strategy is, of course, the incredibly short supply of social housing at social rents in Cambridge, despite the prolific house building that's omnipresent here. How, in your opinion, with your considerable insight into our housing situation and the Homes England's grants that make social housing possible, can we contribute to more social housing at social rents in our unequal city? So essentially, what can we do as a city council going forward long term to make that happen?
Thank you, Councillor Nick Mannis, for your question. Obviously, the Housing Needs Register, which Councillor Bird referenced earlier, it's there for anyone who needs to be on that register, is looking for accommodation. That might be people in existing accommodation, of course, but it also includes those who are presenting as homeless and we have a statutory duty to. It's a question of making sure we get the balance right and providing council homes, especially with the emphasis we've heard today on social rents, is really important to make sure we have as much provision as possible so that we can accommodate everyone who really needs it. And I think that's quite important in terms of how we're going to progress as a council. We're absolutely conscious of the needs of everyone requiring good quality accommodation here in the city, and we'll work as hard as we can to just make sure we get that balance right and provide indeed as much social rent that we can given the constraints we have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, I've just heard that all of our public toilets have sharps collections within them, so that's available, but obviously, as you mentioned, they're not open 24 hours a day, but that's something that we can review outside of this meeting. Now, we've got one other person online who is Councillor Flaubert, who didn't register your interest. So just to be aware that if in future, if all councillors could let us know beforehand that they'd like to ask a question, and obviously if you want to let us know roughly what it's about, then we can be prepared to be sure that we know exactly what you need. But if you could ask your question, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'm really sorry. I thought that we could put the questions there. I'm new to this committee. So my question is, if Councillor Elton John is not ready to respond this question, then I could send it by email if that is appropriate. But my question is, so based on priority 6, which actions have been fully implemented and which action remain outstanding? Thank you.
Yes, can we look at that question, Councillor Florber, and send you a written response, if that's okay?
Yes, thank you very much.
Great, thank you. So I think that's everybody's questions on this item. Oh, no, sorry, Councillor Martinelli, are you online? Have you got a question?
Thanks, Chair. I think mine has been covered by so I don't need to add it.
Okay, thank you very much. I think that was that his question has been already answered. So therefore I'd like to move to the recommendations which are on page 39. So there's just one recommendation: approves the introduction and implementation of the draft extended Cambridge City Homelessness and Rough Sleeping Strategy 2021. Obviously we're extending it to 2024. And accompanying local plan as set out in annexes 1 and 2 of this report. Everybody in favour, please. Great, thank you. That's unanimous. Lovely. Now I think we'll just have a little comfort break. Now, what time is it? Yes. So should we say 10 minutes? So at 5 minutes to 7 we'll be back. now we are on item number 9. Oh, okay, I'm jumping ahead. I apologise. Number 8. So before I invite Councillor Smart to introduce this item, the report before us also covers agenda items 9 and 10. Therefore, I propose that the recommendations for all 3 items be taken en bloc. And for the purposes of the discussion, I'll take each subject area separately. We will first consider the public toilets, then the street cleaning, and finally the item on improving public safety and environmental enforcement before moving to the vote. So, Councillor Smart, please.
Thank you, Chair. So thank you to members for working so constructively on this work. There are 9 recommendations before members today, this reflective of the quite detailed proposals in this item. These cover toilet, street cleaning and enforcement. So firstly, I'd like to say that we took the decision to close Parker's Piece Toilet in good faith, and we used the recent transformation of our services to give the most efficient and effective use of our residents' council tax money. The council has actively prioritised protecting frontline services, opting instead to find required budget savings through service efficiencies, joint working and natural vacancy management. On council finances, and Councillor Gawthorpe-Wood has spoken on this earlier, there were and continue to be pressures that need careful management. However, these proposed changes can be managed and the funding arrangements are set out in the recommendations. The details of toilets management is complex, and we want to get on with the job and bring forward the reopening of toilets on Parker's Piece. On quayside toilets, we had already decided to open them beforehand, and these will continue to be open going forward. Employing extra cleaning staff on a different shift can be challenging to do, and in the most cost-effective way, but we'll do our best in that regard. We aim to get on with this work as soon as possible, and we'll pursue that goal. So just finally, Chair, I see that Alistair Wilson is online, so in case he wants to add anything later or answer any questions, he'll be available. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. Do we have any Cabinet members who'd like to ask a question? No? Okay, so we'll move first to Councillor Bick and Councillor Bennett.
Thanks, Chair. I got several comments, if I could make. I appreciate the report and the recommendations. I'd like to thank Councillor Thornborough and Councillor Smart for their willingness to support the improvements that are articulated in here. They do cover many of the services that many of the public think we're primarily here for, keeping the public realm clean, orderly and furnished with basic amenities like public toilets. I also, just given where we are and the time of year, like to say that I think of the staff performing some of these services, and it's probably worth just pausing a moment and recognising and saying thank you, because this is a really difficult time of year to be working out of doors in this heat, and it's also the time of year that the work is the most challenging anyway, and for the last couple of years they have been working with less staff colleagues than they used to have, and I do think that it's worth saying thank you to them for doing what they do. It's a long time since the resources for these services were increased by the council, and it's a delight to see that there may be consensus that now more is needed and it can happen. We should therefore see an improvement in street cleaning and public realm enforcement, and the closed public toilets reopen very soon indeed. The recommended changes should have an impact for people across the city. The city centre is naturally a hot spot because it sees so many people tread its streets and open spaces, but those people are from all over the city and beyond, and the city centre is part of our local economy. The better services there are resourced, the less resources have to be sucked from them to the rest of the city. And it's an explicit goal that the first half of the new shift of street cleaners will support better programmed cleaning across the city, such as cleaning litter bins, speeding up graffiti removal and removing gum from pavements. The second half of that shift, that extra shift, will ensure that litter overflowing from litter bins in the centre doesn't remain and get kicked around there from 3:30 in the afternoon through the rest of the day, through the night economy until collection the following morning. And a lot of that time is still peak usage of those areas. And I think the same principle for the street cleaning also applies to public realm enforcement, that this is something that should benefit the whole city. Now, it's quite a detailed proposal. It differs slightly from the amendments that my colleagues and I moved in the February budget discussion, though I think it's clear that the goals are the same. The main reason for that is that the implementation that is now necessary to have it on stream for most of this summer makes temporary staffing the best option initially. It does leave the question of ongoing sustainability, which will now need further decision making, which I will be pushing strongly with my colleagues for us to achieve, and I hope it won't only be us. It would clearly be playing with the public to walk away from these improvements as they were in themselves temporary after the new administration had got themselves safely installed. So happily, in talking to Councillor Smart and Thornborough, I see nothing to suggest that that is the intention. And so I believe that we are on board with making this sustainable. Last year it was said that the council's restructuring and staff reductions in these areas were enabled by efficiency improvements and that service standards wouldn't suffer. What has subsequently emerged is that some of those efficiency improvements hadn't then happened, and some still haven't. The resourcing still disappeared. So it was unlikely that service standards wouldn't be affected by the very significant cutbacks in staffing that were made. Now, there are always going to be ways of improving efficiency, and we certainly aren't opposed to them. But I think for the future, these need to be proven and in place before resources are actually reduced. And that requires a clear and detailed statement of the standards we're trying to keep to. So in encouraging the Cabinet to support what is recommended here, I would like to appeal for the support of Councillor Smart as we go forward to help make this sustainable, not in future to claim efficiency savings till they are in place, and to bring forward for agreement a statement of standards for street cleaning, enforcement and public toilets that we can use to guide policy and resourcing as we go forwards. I think the bottom line of this is we all ought to have a common interest in taking these services with us into a new unitary at a desirable level for the long term, as we in the City Council will then be amongst colleagues from other current councils who don't have current experience of similar services. So if we don't bring in to the unitary something that we could be really proud of, then I think we're going to be struggling with these services from the start. I'd just like to say thank you again, and please support what has been recommended.
Great, thank you very much. Now, you've had a very brief, really, question to Councillor Smart, but also my understanding is you've actually dealt with all three in one. And so I wonder whether you would like to answer Councillor Bick's question and then just cover 9 and 10, and then we could go to the rest of the questions, if that's easier, if you're happy to do that.
Firstly, Sharon, what does that 9 and 10 mean?
Oh, improving street cleaning and improving public safety and environmental enforcement.
Sorry. Where's that?
They're the next items.
Oh, the next item, sorry. Okay.
Sorry, they're all sort of linked together, but I thought you said do them one at a time. But since Councillor Bick has answered all three, it might be better to just But we can also just move to the questions if that's easier. Do you want to answer Councillor Bick?
You lost me, Chair, sorry. I was happy to respond to what Councillor Bick said there on item 8, and the answer is yes, happy to work together. So just had a couple of things to say. So firstly, Councillor Bick chose his words carefully. He said that residents expected toilets, and they do, and that's quite right and proper. They're not a statutory provision, but they do expect them, and those two things have no meaning in real life. What's the important thing is what our residents want, and that's the important thing. The other point I'd make is that Councillor Bick, Councillor Power and myself all live in the centre of the city, quite close together. We all see what Councillor Bick is talking about today, and I'm very much aware of it. I walk around the city every evening practically, and I see the overflowing bins, I see the mess on the greens and so on. And you know, the thing with that is places are only as clean as the last user, and we get a lot of usage in a city at this time of the year. It's busy and it needs work doing, and I think I'd be interested to see how these proposals work out, because you know, they've been brought forward and I'm keen to support them and get some work done on that. So I'm all for it, collaborative work.
Great, thank you. So I think we are just taking them all on block. That's what I'm taking. So Councillor Bennett, your question, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'd rather just do my 8 toilets questions first, if I may. I'm also speaking for Apologies. I'm also speaking for Councillor Jean Glasberg, who's unable to make it here tonight due to a family emergency. And we're a little disappointed that we didn't have the opportunity to look at this in scrutiny. She didn't have the opportunity to look at this in scrutiny, despite requesting reports before this came to Cabinet, because toilets is something people care a lot about and the details matter. And one of the details I'd like to raise is there's a reference to problems with coin-operated toilets, and we know that many people don't carry cash anymore. However, we'd like to understand why it's thought that a bank card reader would be an improvement. Under 18s visiting the city centre on their own are unlikely to have bank cards with them, and overseas visitors may have bank cards which are not compatible with UK payment software or may experience disproportionate transaction charges. We'd also like to understand what the costs of installing bank card readers are compared to the likely revenue, and how proof those readers would be against vandalism and card theft, which is when somebody puts up a spoof reader that takes your card and then they have a way with it, and our maintenance costs included in these costings. We also note that funding is to come from a transformation fund. However, it would be useful if Martin could confirm whether any funding has been diverted from funds for maintenance of other public toilets. Several councillors, including myself and Jean, have received complaints over the Jesus Green facilities, and I believe other councillors here may wish to raise concerns about their own ward toilet facilities. My ward, Abbey, has just one set of public toilets. It's been out of order for as long as any local resident can remember, and I've lived in that ward for 26 years. Where are the toilets for residents coming to Colden Commons Park Run or playing football there? Where are the toilets for greenways? If we don't have these provisions, how can we expect people to make use of active travel? I'm not going to say I'm opposed to this item, because just because you don't solve all the problems doesn't mean to say it isn't worthwhile solving one of the problems. But I don't want that issue to be forgotten. Thank you.
Thank you. So just before Councillor Smart comes in, I'll just highlight that obviously this, the aim was to get this agreed as quickly as possible to implement these changes, and that a report is coming to scrutiny on the 23rd of September. And also just that obviously if Councillor Glasberg who is the chair of that committee, then she can decide to request that to be reviewed at scrutiny committee. So, Councillor Smart, would you like to respond?
Yep, thank you for your question, Councillor. So firstly, I think it's important to distinguish between what this report does and what it does not do. The report is not seeking Cabinet approval to introduce charging at public toilets. Rather, it recommends that where investment is made, facilities should be designed in a way that does not preclude charging from being considered in the future. If a future Cabinet wanted to introduce charging at any location, that would require a separate report supported by a business case, equality impact assessment and member decision. I could talk more about charging with toilets, but I think I'll stop there because there's a lot to say and I have a few opinions on that myself. Anyway, we'll come to that in the future if it comes about. On the specific point about payment methods themselves, the report recognises that traditional coin-operated systems are becoming increasingly difficult to operate. Cash usage has declined significantly, meaning many users no longer carry coins, while coin mechanisms require cash collection, are labour-intensive to maintain, and have historically been vulnerable to vandalism, theft, and mechanical failure, and by the way, expose our staff to potential attack and abuse from stealing money from them if they are seen to be carrying money. Modern contactless systems remove many of these operational issues and can offer greater convenience for most users. However, members are right to highlight that not everyone has access to a bank card or compatible payment method, particularly some young people and some overseas visitors. Those accessibility considerations would form an important part of any future proposal on charging and would need to be addressed before any decision was brought back to members. In terms of costs, the report does not commit the Council to installing contactless payment equipment across the estate. Any future proposal would need to demonstrate that installation costs, maintenance, transaction fees, resilience to vandalism, and expected income represented value for money. Those costs would be considered alongside operational savings such as reduced cash handling and maintenance as a part of a future business case. On the question of funding, I can confirm that the Transformation Fund allocation identified in this report has not been diverted from budgets for maintaining the existing public toilet estate. It is funding to support the reopening of facilities and associated improvements. Day-to-day maintenance budgets remain in place for the wider network, and officers continue to respond to maintenance issues as they arise. With regard to Jesus Green and other facilities, members are right to point out that there are wider challenges across the public toilet network. The report itself acknowledges that further investment will be required over time. At Jesus Green, officers are progressing short-term improvements while also developing longer-term proposals linked to the wider investment planned through the new leisure management contract and the future redevelopment of facilities at the Lido. Finally, in relation to Abbey Ward, your ward, Councillor, the report before Cabinet is focused on reopening facilities and making targeted operational improvements. It is not a review of the overall distribution of public toilets across the city. Questions around provision for locations such as Caldham's Common, park run participants or the greenways are legitimate strategic questions, but they fall outside the scope of this report and would need to be considered as part of any future review of the city's public toilet network and future capital investment priorities. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Now I've got Councillor Fisher to ask a question and then Councillor Bagent. You're not on the list, but if afterwards you could be very quick. So Councillor Fisher, please.
Thank you, Chair. Can everyone hear me okay? It's similar vein to Councillor Bennett's comment about other public toilet facilities. I think it's clear that Mill Road has been overlooked for a number of years with very little investment. I've had countless emails from residents explaining that they're seeing public defecation in the cemetery nearby, which is only 500 metres from the Gwyder Street public toilets that were closed. So it seems like all of these problems, as we know, are interconnected, and that reopening public toilets would help solve that issue. I also want to raise that often investment is happening in the city centre when we have the high street of Mill Road, which serves a lot of small local businesses, and they feel, I've spoken many times to the Mill Road Traders Association, and they feel really let down by this council and the lack of investment that they're seeing, especially considering that they've seen the bus gate, which I'm personally in favour of, but they're not seeing the money from that bus gate being invested into their local area. I know we have the Mill Road co-design going on, but they are explaining that they are perpetually told, oh, this will happen in the future, don't worry, it's round the corner, the resurfacing is coming, but these public toilets are there, they could be reopened, and I just want to ask why we're prioritising the ones in the centre over ones in Mill Road. Thank you.
Thank you. So just before Councillor Smart comes in, just to be clear that anything to do with the bus gate, that was the county council, but we are working with them on the improvements to Mill Road. But would Councillor Smart like to answer that one, please?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, and I'm sorry to hear that traders feel let down, and I'll be happy to work and meet with traders if I can help in any way on that. Just on the question of what the councillor explained was happening in the graveyard and its relationship to the toilets that were closed some time ago on Mill Road. That's a concerning issue, and that too I'll be happy to speak to Councillor Fisher about. I do know of it from other councillors anyway, and we have had some people sleeping in the graveyard more recently and that sort of thing. So there is an ongoing issue there that needs addressing, that's wider than just the provision of public toilets, I think, myself. And I'm aware of concerns about the cemetery over time, and in fact I know that other councillors have brought concerns about that, and we've addressed them as time has gone on, and it's not really gone away, it comes and goes, and this time of year in hot weather perhaps is particularly pertinent. Anyway, going back to the substantive part of the councillor's question, so thank you by the way for the question, councillor. That facility is not subject to a recommendation in today's report, so I can't preempt any future reconsideration of previous decisions about its operation or investment. However, I recognise the question has been raised, and the report before us is one step in that wider programme. It seeks to reopen facilities, improve service resilience, and ensure that future investment decisions retain flexibility. Wider questions about individual sites, such as Gwyder Street, will continue to be considered as part of the Council's ongoing review of its public toilet estate and future investment priorities. And I mean, on that, other councillors have come to me and discussed over time, you know, that Gwyder Street toilets could be a CAF, and maybe with a toilet attached, and that's the case or in other toilets across the city that have limited use and maybe could be used more effectively, like for example on Romsey Rec, the toilets could have a CAF there as well as toilets, but it's about making it commercially viable, making the whole thing work. And I mean, commercial viability isn't the only thing, but all of these things are possible, and I'm open to all collaborative work.
Great, thank you very much. Councillor Bajent, please, very quickly if you can.
I can. Thank you to the Cabinet member. He wonders why the Mill Road traders are not happy with him, and there's no toilet and it needs opening. People are defecating on the streets, they're defecating in the cemetery. We are not covering what is the up and coming commercial area in the city, which is Mill Road. It is night-time economy is blossoming. So I think that being brief is, I couldn't have said it as well as my colleague said it.
Thank you very much. I'm not sure that that needs an answer because it was covered by the previous answer. So I would just like to, if there aren't any more questions, there are none online. So just to say, the desire to make these improvements was not difficult. But what is difficult is ensuring that we can pay for this and knowing that our budget is limited. So when we increase expenditure in one area, it sometimes means decreasing it in others or using our reserves. So these improvements should help the whole city, as has been mentioned, not just the city centre, and all councillors can be involved. But I'd like to thank officers for their quick work in bringing this paper and the proposals to Cabinet. Now for this item there are 9 recommendations. Has everybody seen the recommendations, and are Cabinet happy to take them on block? Brilliant. So they're on page 253 for anyone following along online. So all those in favour, please raise your hand. That's unanimous. Thank you very much. Okay, so that covered number 9, number 10, and yes, I can count. Thank you. No, I needed your help. Now we're on to, oh, there's a few people leaving. We'll just give them a minute. But then we're moving on to number 11, please, which is page 271. Oh, did you have a question, Councillor Bick?
We had a question about
the other items. Okay. Are you happy to receive?
I thought you had a question about some of the
The 3 other items.
Yes.
You have another question. Absolutely correct. Yes, you're so right. So the item that's just been discussed was premised on an agreement that was made between my group and the Labour group prior to the ultimate AGM. The item that we've discussed was one of 4, and very pleased that it's been supported and voted on just now. I just wondered whether there could be an update. What's the plan in relation for the other 3 items, the first of which was to do with HMOs and short-term visitor accommodation. The next was to do with a public spaces protection order for antisocial driving, and the third was the Council's response to the Equalities Act guidance on the relative to the use of public toilets and other similar amenities in the city.
Brilliant. And I'll just cover them quickly and maybe forward you the response in. So for HMOs, this was first raised in Council about 2 years ago, and a huge amount of work has been done during this time by officers across both planning and the enforcement teams. So councillors were briefed on the evidence and outcomes recently on the 24th of June. The findings are very interesting and will be covered along with the next steps for the local plan at the Overview and Scrutiny Performance Assets and Strategy Committee on the 15th of July, next week. Papers were published yesterday. So this includes an evidence study on the role of and impact of HMOs in Cambridge. So any recommendations arising from that scrutiny committee will be considered at a joint cabinet with South Cambs, which meets on the 21st of July and is in South Cambs Hall in Camborne. And if approved, the proposed submission will then be subject to a public consultation. The evidence shows where there are greater densities of HMOs in the city, and so it will help councillors consider bringing Article 4, which requires planning consent for family homes to be turned into HMOs. And officers are currently reviewing the evidence and process in order for us to review whether to introduce that. And so the report on the recommendations will come to Cabinet on the 20th of October. So thank you very much to the officers for all of their work on that one. Then the Public Spaces Protections Order. So we've used PSPOs in the past, but not for antisocial driving. So officers are looking into how they've been used elsewhere for antisocial driving and how effective these have been. for a PSPO to be granted, it would need to, the council would need to gather justifiable evidence that the behaviour has a detrimental effect on quality of life and that it's persistent, unreasonable and justifies those restrictions. Therefore, it really requires a good evidence base. So from officers' investigations, once this evidence base has been gathered, then it generally takes between 6 and 12 months for the formal decision to be agreed and an enforceable order to be created. But obviously this will depend on the situation in Cambridge. Oh, and I can just say that officers intend to bring the report on this item to the Cabinet meeting on the 20th of October. Then last but not least, the Council's response to the Equalities Act guidance. So actually officers began assessing this back in May when it was laid before Parliament. Parliament then has a statutory duty to review it within 40 days, and if they disapprove the guidance or if they make any changes, then we will review that once that's been agreed in Parliament. So there's currently a petition to disprove the guidance which has reached over 10,000 signatures. Just to be clear, that's not a petition specific to Cambridge, that's a national petition, and so that means that the government will need to respond to that petition. And so officers will bring a report as soon as the agreement has been made by Parliament, and then the Council will review our next steps. We're also aware that some members would like to consider the matter at the Services, Climate and Communities Committee, and that will, we expect, if the decisions are made, be meeting on the 24th of September. But that would be up to the Chair and the Vice Chair to confirm, and then it would come to Cabinet on the 20th of October. And just that Councillor Davison made some very important comments, and no doubt these will be taken into account in the Council's response. And once again, just thank you to officers for working on this. And I think that's it. But if you've got any further questions, please let myself know or Katie outside of this meeting. Thank you. Back to me again. So item number 11, it's the Community Infrastructure Levy. I don't know if there are any questions on this. Essentially, it's to secure funding from developments. Oh, this normally would be introduced by the leader, Councillor Katie Thornborough, but she's sent her apologies, so I'll just be very brief. That it's to secure funding from developments to address the funding deficit for strategic transport infrastructure, and it will help to improve sustainable travel choices and reduce car dependency. Section 106 obligations will remain restricted to local needs like schools, doctors, surgeries and community events. I hope that Cabinet will authorise the formal submission of the draft charging schedule and amended instalment policy. Following a successful public examination, the final schedule must be formally adopted by a resolution of the full Council, with full SIL implementation anticipated in early 2027. Do we have any questions on this item? Yes, Councillor Smart?
Thank you, Chair. So I just wanted reassurance perhaps from Stephen Kelly that the scale of charges that we're proposing to make for these SEAL charges is the best, the highest that we can get, that we're going to get the most money from these developers that we can possibly squeeze out of each development. I know that, you know, we've looked at charges around the country, we've put together a scale of charges that seems to work for us, and but I'm hoping that he can reassure us that this is the best we can get. It works the best. I mean, obviously, we want to be fair to developers as well, so that they can afford to pay these charges. But that it's for us, as a city, it's for our residents, and it's important that we get it right. And just finally, that those charges will go up year on year with an appropriate rate of inflation index. Thank you, Chair.
Is that on? Yep. Good. Yes. Firstly, your second point. Yeah, all civil charges are indexed annually, and so they will go up with the appropriate level of inflation. The issue of is this the most we can get from developers has raised, in a sense, that question is the central part of a number of the representations that you'll have seen. We have, if you compare some of our charges with other areas, they are higher, particularly noting this is just about strategic transport infrastructure. So other parts of Cambridgeshire have higher charges, but that covers all infrastructure, including education, open spaces and so forth. This is just targeted towards that strategic transport contribution. It's comparable with what has been secured if we look at strategic sites, for example, and there are examples in the paper. The development industry, it won't surprise you, has made representations to suggest a lower charge, albeit in some cases recognising the importance of having a structured way of capturing contributions towards infrastructure. Some of our communities have suggested a higher charge. The essence of this question will be tested at the independent examination. We've noted the comments that have been made. We've re-examined the viability by developer on the back of developer submissions with our specialist viability consultant, and we believe it's an appropriate, strikes the appropriate balance between enabling development to proceed but also capturing the right contribution. That will be tested, and we will come back to Council with the recommendations of that examiner in due course.
Great, thank you. Thank you very much. Yes, so I know we've got Councillor Poor online, and just before that we've got Councillor Bennett. Would you like to ask a question?
Chair, before I ask my questions, could I ask how we're doing for time? Because the author of this report, James Fisher and Stephen Kelly, have already had my questions online, and I'm a little worried about how the time's going.
Yes, we're not doing very well, so if you feel your question has been answered, then we could move on to Councillor Pora, or would you like to hear Councillor Pora's question and then see? Should we try that?
Yes, please.
Great. Councillor Pora, please.
Thank you very much, Councillor Moore. In fact, it's more a statement just to say that from my group's point of view, we are very supportive of this going forward. I've looked through the evidence. Like Councillor Smart, we want to make sure this is balanced and fair, and I'm confident that going forward to the next stage is something we would support. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you. Do you want to ask a brief question?
No, thank you.
Sorry, I meant Councillor Bennett. Thank you, Councillor Pora. Sorry.
Chair, I haven't had my questions answered yet, but James and Stephen had offered me a follow-up meeting. So I think I'd like to only ask one of them now, because it's one that is concerning local community groups quite a lot. And it's about the neighbourhood portion, which is sort of like a community part of the community infrastructure levy, if that makes any sense to people. And I understand we'll be deciding in 12 months' time how that's going to be allocated. The concern that I've had relayed to me is that if a council is parished, normally it gets divided up among the parish councils, but we're not a parish city, and we're probably not going to be very popular with the ministry if we move to being one. What I think the concern here is that community groups want to ensure their voice is heard in any discussions we have about how the neighbourhood portion is.
Great, thank you.
And have a chance to have their say. Thank
Yeah,
you.
thank you. Stephen, would you like to answer?
Certainly, and just to offer some reassurance to communities, obviously there are a number of places with sills, particularly metropolitan areas and so forth, where there is no parish council. There are a range of regimes that boroughs and city councils have followed to distribute the local contribution, which is obviously fixed as a proportion of the sill receipts to local areas. The reason we've suggested that it's not something we can immediately resolve is obviously in the consequences of LGR and the wider governance that would underpin that. We think it's important that that question about how local communities participate in decisions around that, which is an endemic part of the local government reorganisation discussion, is captured and resolved. The thing that I think, and to reassure communities that they won't lose out on the back of that, the sill proposals we've suggested may well be introduced, if they are confirmed and come forwards, in the early part of next year. It's only development approved after that time, a planning permission's approved after that time, that is then sill liable. And of course there's then a period of time before anyone actually puts a spade in the ground to build them, and that liability accrues. So we're comfortable that any very modest contributions that might accrue between us being able to set the sill rate and start collecting funds, but then have a governance process in place, is likely to be relatively small. And it does seem appropriate as we think about LGR that rather than do something piecemeal now, that we capture that as part of a proper governance review process in that forum. And it's for that reason that we're saying we think it should be resolved through that. I want to reassure people any funds will not be spent on other purposes until we've resolved the way in which we do that.
Great, thank you very much for your comprehensive answer. So there's one recommendation which is to for the submission of the draft charging schedule and amended draft instalment policy and associated evidence to be put forward for independent examination. So all those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you. Oh, you're meant to say that. No. Sorry. Okay, so now item 12. I'd just like to highlight that in one point, which is a fleet decarbonisation and replacement project, which is on page 601, which is in my portfolio, so I'll be So it was in my portfolio. It's moving portfolio's to Councillor Martin Smart, but I'm going to introduce this paper today. But item 1.1.c, it's still got me within it, and so we just need to edit that to be Cabinet Member for Nature and City Services. So just it pretty much does exactly what it says. It aligns with our electric vehicle and infrastructure strategy, which we agreed in 2019. The plan is to replace our vehicles from 12% electric, which they are currently, to approximately 75%. And we've been waiting to do this until the new Ops Hub came online with the new charging facilities. And of course, those are now online. It will be within this, as we agreed actually in 2019, standard practice will be to replace vehicles with electric, unless, because still some vehicles aren't available, they need to be replaced by other technologies, or perhaps using alternative fuels such as HVO, hydro-treated vegetable oil, which we're using across our fleet currently, which really reduces climate impacts. So we've got a large investment in our vehicles, which will ensure that our vital services that residents rely on are maintained. All items that we've been discussing tonight really rely on our fleet in good working order, and there are huge benefits to be seen in our carbon emissions reductions, helping to improve our air quality that we create as a council, and also there'll be savings, financial savings once all of the vehicles are replaced in terms of operating costs and fuel costs. So I'd like to ask if anyone has any questions. Yes, Councillor Smart.
Not a question for you, Chair, but I'd just like to say that I fully support this item, as I'm sure you do. This is a great proposal. We've talked about electric vehicles in this council all the time I've been a councillor, and it's an ongoing project, really, isn't it, for us? And I mean, it's just a fantastic thing to have electric vehicles rather than using essentially diesel vehicles in the city, because it means less pollution, and you're the expert on that in terms of your portfolio about climate change. But I know there may be some challenges in bringing this forward in terms of making it work logistically, but I know that staff are fully on board, and they and we will make this happen for residents in the city, because it's definitely right for the city, and it's right for us as a council to be doing this. And just to say finally, you know, we do count money. Money is the thing, finances, and our residents would expect that. There are other ways of counting things, and carbon is another measurement tool. And carbon is important, and especially at the moment when we've got such hot weather, which is a direct result of climate change in the world. We need to do our bit. Doing our bit may only be a small part of the small part that the city can do as a city in this small country of ours, but if we all do our bit across the world, that will have an effect, and that's why I'm so much in favour of this item. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Councillor Bick and then Councillor Bennett, please.
Yeah, I'm also enthusiastic for what's recommended in this report. I had two questions that go along with that. One is the required EV charging infrastructure. Is that already in place, or is that a further cost that needs to be anticipated? And secondly, I think organisations, in my experience, spend a long time agonising over the choice between leasing and buying. And it seems to me that it's quite a relevant issue to this sort of thing, because as I think the report even says, that technology evolves in this field quite fast, which is good, but it does have the effect that assets that you've bought and own outright may be quite difficult to sell at the end of their lives as technology has moved on. And there is also, I think, in the people writing about the question marks over the length of life of battery-driven vehicles because of the batteries, and it's untested. And I'm just wondering whether leasing actually is a way of reducing our risk in doing what is proposed here. And I was a bit surprised to see that the evolution of technology and the difficulty of resale didn't appear to be a factor in this, which I would have thought it should be. And I just wonder whether there must be a fuller evaluation than is in the report of leasing versus buying, which I do think would be logical for those of us interested to have a look at, to be sure, and in particular understand what other local authorities were doing in this field, because we obviously are not the only ones contemplating these sort of big acquisitions, and to know what conclusions they are reaching so that we have an idea of the sector and feel that it's not entirely driven just by the fact we've got a garage and need to use it.
Would you like to ask your question, Councillor Bennett, and then I answer it all together?
I think that would be helpful, because I asked my question of Peter Birch before this meeting, and I asked a nerdy question and got a long and nerdy reply, but I'll just distill two bits out of it, which do actually relate to Councillor Bick's question. The first question, I asked is why is it 75% and not 100%? And I got back the answer I was expecting. It's because our fleet includes specialist vehicles, including telescopic handlers, grave digging machinery, and mobile workshops. And I found that useful to know, so I'm sharing it. And the second thing is that I understand there was a detailed report from Tetra Tech which covered operational requirements and the whole of life costs. I do think this is quite a big ticket number, and while I know that the reports this cabinet meeting are already over 700 pages, I would have been much more comfortable if we could have seen the Tetra Tech report in advance. Because if you supply reports, we don't have to read them, but we do have that option. And I might have spent more years of my life than I probably want to looking at lease v buy decisions. But I'm quite happy to look at a few more.
Great, thank you. So, is the required EV charging in place? There are, at the Ops Hub, which Councillor Smart can confirm afterwards. Where are you pointing at? Oh, there are more chargers, but also the rest of it has been set up for new chargers to be easily and readily installed. Yes, a lot of thought did go into leasing or buying, and then to cover your point, Councillor Bennett, I will look into that report and see how we can share that. But one option is for it to be covered by, to be raised at the scrutiny committee. But essentially, we don't tend to sell our vehicles. We tend to use them until they're unusable anymore, and we don't see that to be changing. Part of the phased approach will be considering the impacts of LGR, because obviously whoever we're linked with will have their own vehicles, but we will still need to complete the council's work. So it will be a phased process. We won't be buying them all tomorrow. And the savings were actually, although there's a higher initial outlay, usually when you lease vehicles, then you sign up to a sort of contract of maintenance. And so the ongoing costs for that were much higher than overall buying the vehicles and managing them ourselves. So that's why that decision has been made. But as I say, we can look at the information and share that more widely. We're not making this decision just to provide the garage with jobs, because actually there are people wanting to use the garage, but we're having to review whether there's the capacity there. So it's not about that, it's about the best value for the council whilst ensuring that we've got the right vehicles able to complete the vital work that we need. I think Councillor Bennett answered her own question on why 75%. Not all vehicles are yet available, but obviously within the lifetime of this plan to phase in new vehicles, that could increase as we go on, as more of those vehicles become available as electric. And I'll look into getting the report to you from Tetra Tech. I think that's covered it enough. Yeah? Great. Any other questions? No? Okay. So the recommendations are on page 601. And just to highlight that we've already approved £2 million, the first 2 million, in the budget of this year. And this report is indicating future capital requirements of £3 million in 27-28 and a further 3 million in 2028-29. However, those both would need to go through the council's annual budget setting report, which, as we've noted, will be a joint effort amongst all parties. So there are 3 recommendations on page 601. Is everybody aware of them and happy to approve en bloc? Yes? All those in favour, please? Thank you. That's unanimous. Thank you. And so last but definitely not least, number 13, the quarterly performance report on page 4, January to March 2020. Is it 25 or is it 2026? 25-26, page 623. So Cabinet Member Gawthorpe Wood, would you like to introduce it, please?
Right, I'm conscious it's 10 to 8 already. So there's a lot of information in this quarterly report. I'm presenting it given my portfolio covering corporate operations, and of course there are links with the budget as it stands, but it also covers my fellow cabinet members' portfolios. You know, it represents the whole council's work, so they may wish to comment. The report tracks and monitors performance, not just the spending, although it does include the group level accounts and actually even business unit level information, I'll call it. It also covers risks and ties these to the corporate risks and the way that these are managed now. I wasn't quite sure how much detail to go into. Sorry, I'll go back a bit. I have mentioned the statutory end-year accounts published 30th of June. So this then, and it's noted in the report, allows for the required external audit to be carried out. So that's done by external auditors. So they may be late, but it should be available at the end of January. I put 25 here. Well, that's wrong, 27. I want to draw the attention to all the work that the council has done in the final quarter, January to March 26. And that's on page 631 in the printed agenda. And in addition to delivering all the statutory services. So there's a whole load in there. It includes things dear to my heart, the 1 million in community grants to support our city and alleviate poverty. The 3-year funding for homelessness, which has been secured, and for homelessness and rough sleeping, so that's 2 million per year more. Then there's the Greater Cambridge Social Impact Fund, so the 6.26 million there, and I put £6.26, to support locals facing poverty, homelessness and inequalities. We've got the 5 million water saving measures in council buildings, the renewable solar park, energy park, and there's a whole lot more in there, but I'm not going to go through all of them. Yeah, I wanted to we've agreed a climate change strategy, heat network project, biodiversity strategy, our urban forest strategies. And we're also recognised as one of the 120 A-list cities mitigating and adapting to climate change. I want to reiterate the risks and pressures on the budget and future forecasts. We've had business continuity arrangements reviewed to ensure we had fuel to support the operational fleet with the possible scarcity of fuel due to the Straits of Hormuz closure and the Iran war. Our strong position is pretty much reflected also in the performance measures. So the general fund activities continue to perform effectively, and where metrics show deviations, I think it's clear where that's occurred. Now, in terms of our role as a social landlord, that is more challenging. Outstanding debts is a direct work of, we have some outstanding debts, or as a direct work, and we're working on rent rectification. So back rents, that's the outstanding debts I'm talking about. Voids and relet times reflect a combination of process and the condition of properties coming back to the council, and work's been going on to improve the process. Property condition is more challenging, but our stock condition survey should support reducing that over time. So as a residential social landlord, we have over 7,000 homes, 7,700, over 1,200 leaseholders, and of course we're building new homes. So that's in page 633 in the report. We now report to a social housing regulator. We gained a C2 award. C1 is the top score. We also have the Housing Advisory Board and a new tenant and leaseholder strategy in place, which aims to build a collaborative culture and look to continuously improve. There are new requirements and needs to improve our housing stock to meet better energy performance, damp condensation and mould control, such as the AWAB's law covers. So the current £41 million budget in the HRA, the Housing Revenue Account, covers all the costs of management, planned and demand-led work. We're obviously seeking a Homes England strategic partnership for funding to support the 1,300 new council homes. And although we will sell probably 1,000. In addition, any profit from those goes to building more council homes. We've also mentioned voids, still an issue, although it looks as though the number of voids may be coming down a little, or the time to re-let. I've mentioned the refunds to tenants, that's ongoing. The back calculations for earlier years require information from DWP on benefits, and when that work is completed, then we can look at arrears, rental arrears. I think the monitoring tables are self-explanatory, but they do allow readers to delve, and we'll have a longer view and time series as we go forward with these reports, if we decide to include all the quarters. So we do know that our housing register, the numbers on those have gone down. That is a big plus and says something about our house building and development success. Rough sleepers, again, the number's gone down a little bit, but sometimes it's difficult to see a clear trend. So I don't want to pick any more out from that at the moment. So generally speaking, yeah, we have the general fund with a 1.9 million underspend rather than a predicted 0.5 million overspend, which we'd expected in Q3. That means we only need 0.7 million from reserves this year rather than 2.6 million to cover the budget, and the council will be requested to carry forward 2.1 million to the current year. So we've got no need to borrow externally. On commercial property, we've done, I think, better than we were predicted in Q3. Car parking income has also improved, although business rates, as I mentioned before, less well, but that's quite complicated to explain. There is pressure with asset compliance and of our commercial property, so that's the general fund that covers that, and proposals will come forward as part of the 25-26 outturn report. So we at the moment have a capital underspend in the general fund of 20 million. Park Street was delivered early and in budget by almost 20 million under budget. Loans to the Cambridge Investment Partnership we'll need to carry forward, I think, but I think we need to remain cautious. Interest rates have remained higher for longer. That means our investment cash balances are doing well, but borrowing costs are higher. So on risk, it also covers risks. So we've got 7 risks that are listed, operational risks. We've had the major transformation and existing and new pressures do mean that they can be managed tightly and report into the corporate risk register, and the report throws some lights on these. I think one thing to pick out are ICT and cyber security, the asset portfolio and property safety standards, but they're already highlighted and listed in the risks. We've got new anti-fraud and corporate transparency legislation, and have risk management as part of the risk management should be capturing this. And then there are the appendices. So Appendix 2 does cover the residential social landlord performance indicators and risks. We have improved the fire and safety checks. That's captured. There's also the housing performance report, which is linked here. Voids are also mentioned. There is increased reporting and better systems and management. And I've mentioned the refunds and arrears waiting on DWP for benefit adjustments. On the residential social landlord finance, so that's the housing revenue account again. Cost pressures, operating surplus is down 6.9 million, and that reflects the spending on repairs of 6.2 million. That means the 6.4 million less for the capital programme, that is new builds and large planned projects. Fire Waking Watch has cost us 1.5 million, but this is also, I better say, the end of year report, not just quarter 4. But the sites that need this have reduced from 11 to 2, thank goodness. We do have costs surrounding near empty sites. We're not getting any rent from them, and decant costs. And I've also mentioned the voids and the condition there. So capital, no external borrowing at the moment. We need to carry forward 43 million and a further 4 million of approved budget, so that's 47 million in total. So that's what we would want to carry forward, and I think that would come to council, full council. Treasury management, that will report in September to full council. So then there is the Appendix 4, the customer feedback. I'm not sure I want to go through that now. The document is there. I have written up notes, but I'm conscious it's 8 o'clock already.
Should we see if we've got any questions? Any comments? Sorry, any questions from Cabinet members, but also just a request for everybody to have a look and view the excellent work that this report highlights. But no, we've got 2, Councillor Smart and Councillor Bird.
Yeah, just briefly, Chair. So thank you, Jenny, for that. Just on the last one that you didn't go through on the, what's it called, the annual customer feedback report. So Appendix D. So on page 4, it gives a measure of the number of complaints received by the council, which I believe to be an important measure. That's why I'm speaking about it now. And it looks to me like there's a mistake or a typo in that, possibly, as the first paragraph on page 4 gives the difference in the number of complaints in the current report to the previous report as being 104 increase, but it looks to me like it's actually 74 increase, because if you take away one figure from the other, that gives 74. And just on that, I mean that's on a number, so 959 out of 225,000, so it's a very small amount. And just on that, I don't understand the 0.1% of contact received. It looks to me like it's more like less than 0.05% increase. And finally, it would be good to see the relative amounts of complaints, not just from one year to the next, but for a number of years for which we have data. It looks like in the report we have at least data for at least 3 years, so we can see whether complaints are going up or down, or whether there's a tolerance level that we don't need to be so concerned about a rise maybe this year. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Shall we ask Hannah, who, is it Hannah? Sorry, I've got my, yeah, who completed the report?
We'll take that away in terms of those figures, just to ensure they are updated and accurate. So thank you for raising that. We can certainly as well look at the trend data and including that for future quarterly updates.
Thank you. And then Councillor Bird.
Thank you. Thanks, Chair. Yeah, just really to say thank you to the staff who work so hard doing the repairs, because nobody ever thinks to thank them, and it's a thankless job. And I'm great. It's great to see the voids that have come down, and also that our housing register waiting list has come down. So we are doing great work, and to say we've got 7,700 council homes, that's a lot. Thank you, Chair.
Absolutely, that's a fantastic progress. Now, I think, do we have any other questions? Councillor Bick and then Councillor Bennett. Councillor Young, do you have a question? Okay, Councillor Bick, please.
Just a couple of comments, Chair. Again, I like the single report format. I think it's proving its worth. An improvement that I wonder about for the future is, could we, in the financial parts of it, more clearly separate off one-off cost-related items from underlying performance, because I think that they can distort the view that the reader would have of it, and that could be positive or negative, really. So I think it really would help if that could be sort of woven into it somehow. I know that the council always at this time of year sits and looks at a capital programme which is not all delivered. I mean, only half of it by value was delivered here, and although you can say, well, that's kind of how it always is, I just wanted to make the observation that I think increasingly people are taking their view of all of us and the whole political system based on promise versus delivery, and I just can't help thinking that promising less and delivering more is really important for what we do, and I think that we clearly try and keep more balls in the air, with the public sort of strung along with that in a way which loses their interest after a while in what we say, and I just think that maybe it's for our future unitary, but it would be great if we could have a way of being more accurate about deliverability for the future. And then the other comment was in relation to the HRA again. So I looked into the complaints report, and I got, I guess, a little bit of a different view from what we've been encouraged to understand about this, that all of our problems with the problems about repairs and maintenance were all about compliance issues. So we've got new compliance standards to meet, and therefore we've got to find more money to do that. But actually, when you look in the complaints report, you can see that it's being driven by the tenants themselves complaining. Now, yes, they can complain in relation to new regulatory standards. I'm not sure that's probably the whole story, and maybe only part of it. But clearly, it's an ingrained dissatisfaction with delivery there. And I was struck by the difference between complaints about responsive versus planned maintenance, and wondered whether, you know, is there a right point in the balance between those two which can actually increase overall satisfaction. And I wonder whether, you know, are we expecting a published plan ahead of the next budget for tackling this structural HRA pressure that we've got? Because I think that we put more money into the budget and kind of felt good about the fact we were addressing that. But to my mind, that needs to be converted to the sort of like a plan which is really going to spend that money in an effective way. And when I read this report, I was just reminded of the fact that I was just comforting myself that more money had been put in the budget, but what was going to be done with it? I didn't really know how that was going to fix it. So maybe that's not a subject to start debating now, but just wonder whether that's something we ought to be able to come back to.
Thank you. On that last point, I would imagine that will be something that the new, can't remember the name of it, but essentially the finance working group will work on when agreeing the budget for February of next year. And just on your point of promising too much and not delivering, I suppose that's a political decision for each party, essentially, and that the council is ambitious, and I think that can be seen in this quarterly report with the huge progress that's been made in a number of areas. And obviously sometimes issues arise within the year and projects either aren't able to be completed or, well, there's a whole range of different issues. Shall we just, Councillor, you'd like to respond?
I just wanted to say, well, I agree on perhaps separating the one-offs from regular spend. I have raced through that report really quickly, so it probably sounds more muddled than it is in the report, where I think it's pretty clearly set out. In terms of capital projects, I mean, decant costs, decant time, design, planning, having the resources in place and needing to apply for Homes England funding, certainly with the HRA big projects, have to be taken into account, and that can lead to slippage. Also, we know costs, build costs have gone up, and getting supplies, not as bad as in COVID, but it's still a pressure. And then on the repairs and the complaints, it's the customer feedback report. But in terms of issues and complaints, they are responsive repairs, very much demand driven. There is a view that public awareness has increased, certainly for damp mould and condensation, and that they need to contact the council. But often these things are quite complex and they do leave it a bit late, so it comes in being perhaps more expensive, more complex than you'd expected. I think a lot is about expectation management. I mean, areas that people report or on waste, responsive repairs. I mean, I know environmental health has increased, and that's to do with perhaps the way ASB and other environmental health issues are now tracked. Housing advice, that's increased in terms of the complaints. But we've still got 82% of customers who are satisfied. But, you know, it's something you have to keep an eye on.
Thank you. Now we've got 5 minutes until we need to take a vote. So to extend the meeting. So let's try and see if we can answer Councillor Bennett in that time. Go.
Well, what a challenge. I'll be honest, I didn't think we'd get this far down the agenda, and I've been trying to sneak my comments in about this report as we go, as you've probably realised. I'm not going to use my minutes to discuss the ones I didn't raise, because I want to say something else. I want to say that this is a huge improvement on the previous Cabinet meetings I've been to, where I've sat through 3 hours just to make a 2-minute question, and that's the only comment I've been able to make on matters. I think this has been great. It's been lovely to see so many of the new councillors and councillors who are older but haven't come to Cabinet before coming, and so I'd like to say keep it up. And I'm just going to take 30 seconds more if I can. And I read recently that Preston Council has started having council housing stock again. They've got 18. We've got 7,700. Let's go home on that thought.
Thank you very much. So, if we don't have any other questions on this final item, the recommendation is on page 623, and it's to note the contents of the attached quarterly performance report. So do all Cabinet members note this report? Yes, that's noted. So thank you very much to everybody for all of your work on the reports and for staying to the very end and for all of your questions, and a special thanks to Chris for battling through with the technical issues. So well done. Thank you very much. And with that, I will close the meeting. Oh, do I need to say anything special? No, but thank you to everyone. And with that, I'd like to close this meeting. Thank you very much.